Hello! I took this week's photo in the extraordinary Cathedral Mosque of Cordoba, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that was visited by over 2 million people in 2024 and was built by one of the most advanced civilizations in Europe at the time, the Umayyad Caliphate. On the same trip to Andalusia, from the Arabic name Al-Andalus, we also visited the amazing Alhambra in Granada, another World Heritage Site built by a European Islamic dynasty with over 2.5 million visitors a year. But how do these magnificent buildings and their illustrious creators fit into the traditional nationalistic narrative of Spanish history and identity? They are reminders that Spain's roots are not only Christian or even Western, but the rulers who built them are typically seen as foreign invaders who had occupied a country that needed to be reconquered to regain its true identity. Which leads us to the question, when did Spain become Spain? With the Celts, who migrated from the east of Europe to mix with the Iberians and the indigenous pre-Indo-European peoples, with the invasion and domination of the Romans, with the Germanic Visigoths who took over after expanding across the Pyrenees from France, it's complicated. So, let's find out more.
You know that story you learned in school about how Spain was born? What if I told you it's more of a carefully crafted myth than actual history? Today, we're going to dig into that traditional story to figure out how history gets written, and more importantly, why. All right, so let's just jump right in with what seems like a really simple question. When did Spain actually become Spain? I bet for most of you, one year just pops right into your head. 1492. Yeah, that was the big one, right? Columbus sails the ocean blue, the last Muslim kingdom in Spain falls, and boom, a nation is born. But what if that neat and tidy story isn't the whole picture? What if it's not even the most important part of it?
Okay, before we start picking it apart, let's just do a quick run-through of the official story. You know, the one that's been the foundation of Spanish identity for centuries.
So the story goes something like this. It all kicks off way back in 718 with this one battle. You've got this nobleman, Don Pelayo, who wins a victory at a place called Covadonga, and that's the starting gun for the Reconquista. For the next, 7 or 8 centuries, you have these different Christian kingdoms slowly but surely pushing south. Then you get the big power couple moment in 1469, the marriage of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. They unite the two most powerful crowns. And it all leads to the grand finale in 1492 with the fall of Granada, the very last Muslim stronghold. And just like that, a unified Christian Spain is born. Sounds simple enough, right?
Well, yeah, not so fast. Because to really get why that story is a problem, we need to hit the rewind button, like way back, long before this whole Reconquista thing supposedly even started. See, the thing you have to understand is that the Iberian Peninsula wasn't just some empty stage waiting for a star to arrive. It was a total melting pot. I mean, you had Celtic groups mixing with the native Iberians. You had Phoenician and Greek traders setting up shop all along the coasts. Then the Romans show up, and they rule Hispania for a whopping 700 years, leaving this incredible mark. After they fall, you get the Germanic Visigoths. And then, in 711, the Moorish conquest begins, establishing Al-Andalus, which was this incredibly sophisticated civilization that would thrive for centuries. So the big point here is, who were the original people? It's really complicated.
And all of that complexity brings us right to the heart of the matter, to the central pillar of that traditional story, this whole idea of a reconquista, a reconquest. I mean, let's just stop and think about that for a second. A war that lasts for 800 years? Does that even sound possible? It's like the historian Henry Common says, and he puts it pretty bluntly, no military campaign in history has ever lasted that long. It just hasn't happened. The reality is, this wasn't one long, continuous holy war.
It was centuries of shifting alliances, of trade, of incredible cultural exchange, and yeah, periods of fighting between a whole bunch of different kingdoms, both Christian and Muslim.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because modern historians are completely reframing this. They're asking some really tough questions, like was the peninsula not Spain during those centuries of brilliant Islamic civilization in Al-Andalus? And let's be real, if the Visigoths conquered the Romans, who had conquered the Iberians before them, who exactly was reconquering the land from whom? The very term seems to just erase these massive vital chunks of Spanish history.
Okay, and here it is. This is the real bombshell. That word, reconquista, the one the whole story is built on, yeah, nobody used it at the time. It was actually invented in the 19th century, hundreds and hundreds of years after the events it supposedly describes. And that right there tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? The term was created to tell a very specific story to a modern audience, a story about a pure, unified Catholic nation fighting a single enemy for centuries. It was a tool for 19th century nationalism. It had very little to do with medieval reality. So, okay, if 1492 is more of a powerful symbol than a literal start date, then what are the other options? What are the other contenders for Spain's birthday? Well, historians have actually put forward a few different key moments, and this table lays them out perfectly. You still got the traditional date, 1492, which is all about the union of the crowns and the beginning of the empire. But check this out. What about 1556? That's when Philip II inherits a monarchy that is distinctly Spanish and separate from the Holy Roman Empire. That's a huge deal. Or you could jump to 1700, when the Bourbon king Philip V comes in and centralizes everything, basically turning a messy federation of kingdoms into something that looks a lot more like a single unified state. And then there's 1812. This is when the very first constitution formally defines the Spanish nation in modern political language. See? Each one of these dates tells a totally different story about what it even means to be a nation. Okay, so this brings us to the really big question here. If the real story is so messy and complicated, why did the 1492 narrative become the story? Why that one? Well, it turns out 1492 was an incredibly powerful symbol for a few really specific reasons. For one, it packaged history as this clear, simple story of Catholic triumph over Islam. It also served as a justification for the absolutely brutal expulsion and forced conversion of Spain's Jewish and Muslim populations. It represented that big political union of Castile and Aragon, the two heavyweights on the peninsula, and, of course, it was the starting line for Spain's massive global colonial empire. I mean, that is a powerful, dramatic story. And that story became super important in the 19th century. Think about it. This is a time when Spain is actually losing its huge overseas empire. It's having a bit of an identity crisis. So looking back to this moment of supposed unified glory in 1492, that gave them a powerful sense of national pride when they needed it most. And this is really the key takeaway from all of this. The way we tell stories about the past often says just as much about us, right here in the present, as it does about the people who actually lived back then. History isn't just a boring collection of facts. It's a narrative. It's a story that we build. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. What are the founding stories we tell about our own nations? Who do those stories include? And maybe more importantly, who do they leave out? And what purpose are they serving for us today?
Chat about these questions and write down your opinions and ideas. Number 1. When on holiday, do you enjoy visiting historical sites and museums? Give examples. If not, why not? Number 2. Did you pay much attention to history classes when at school? Do you read about history now? Number 3. Do you know much about the history of your local area? Describe as much as you can. Number 4. Describe pre-1492 tourist sites in Spain. For example, the mosque in Cordoba. How Spanish are they? Number 5. What do you think contributes to a national identity? Think about Spain and at least one other country.